The most instinctual way to interact with holograms is with your hands, but there are other ways to interact. Head tracking and eye tracking are two key ways in which HoloLens can understand your area of focus and intent. We'll cover the characteristics of both input methods and share best practices about how and when to utilize them in your applications. Let's start with head tracking. Head tracking is how HoloLens orients itself relative to your environment. It tracks your head position and orientation in 3D space. This is useful for determining which holograms are currently visible and how the device positions them in the real world. Holograms are initially positioned relative to the virtual world coordinates. With your hands at your side, try moving your head around. You'll see a white dot tracked to your head movement. This is called the head gaze cursor. Think of this like a computer mouse. It provides you with visual feedback to know which holograms can be interacted with based on your head position. Move your head around and see how the head gaze cursor behaves as your gaze. A head gaze cursor should be small enough to avoid obstructing content, so you can easily view and interact with the holograms. Holograms are what make the... Not every scenario may be appropriate for using your hands to select a hologram. Head gaze and commit is an input model that extends the familiar concept of point and click. You can select holograms using head gaze and commit. Now, let's interact with holograms using head tracking. Turn your head towards the holograms in front of you. When the head gaze cursor is visible on a hologram, say select.
Select.
When you're done, press or say next.
Select. Next.
Another form of input for hands-free scenarios is head gaze and dwell. It can be used to select a hologram just by keeping the head gaze cursor on. As you've seen in the prior examples, head gaze and dwell can be a good... Eye tracking is how HoloLens understands precisely where you're looking using sensors pointed at your eyes. This provides more accurate information about your area of focus than head tracking alone. Head tracking and eye... For the best possible experience with HoloLens, you should always go through the eye calibration process. Without calibration, you'll see holograms slightly off from where the device expects them to be for Let's interact with holograms using your eyes. Look at the holograms in front of you. Look from hologram to hologram with your eyes. See how they respond when you look at them? These are attentive holograms, and they provide feedback to indicate where you're looking, instead of showing an eye gaze cursor. Eye gaze and commit is similar to what you tried earlier with head tracking. But now you can just look at a hologram and say select to interact with it. Try selecting a few different holograms with your eyes.
Select.
Eye gaze and dwell lets you select holograms in situations where you can't use your hands or your voice. Look at one of the holograms in front of you and keep your focus on it. See how you can select it using just your eyes?
Select.
When you're done, press or say next.
Next.
As you just saw, instead of using an eye gaze cursor, attentive holograms is the recommended approach for indicating which interactable object is in focus when using eye tracking. A cursor is distracting when using eye gaze, so use subtle visual highlights or animations to indicate the selection of a hologram. There's more to eye tracking than just selecting holograms. Let's explore some more advanced uses of eye tracking with HoloLens. See the 2D slate in front of you? Start reading the text. You'll notice that as your eyes approach the bottom of the slate, the text will automatically scroll up to make it easier to read. This also adapts to your reading speed. Now, let's try eye-supported zoom and pan with the map in front of you. To zoom in and see more details, say zoom in.
Zoom in.
Pan, look at the edge of the map to change the viewable area within the 2D slate. When you're done,
Zoom out full.
press or say next.
Zoom out. Zoom out. Zoom out. Zoom in. Zoom in. Zoom in. Zoom in. Next.
We've demonstrated several ways in which eye tracking can be used for positioning and interacting with holograms. For small targets or interactions that require precision, consider the use of hands instead. You can also use eye tracking to understand where users are focusing their attention by generating a heat map. Look around at the holograms in front of you. As you take notice of different holograms, a heat map will be generated based on where you focused. This is a useful analytics tool to evaluate space navigation and to improve your user experience. When you're done, press or say next.
Next.
When a user first launches a HoloLens application that uses eye tracking, they have to accept permission for their eyes to be tracked. If they deny permission, then you won't be able to rely on eye tracking for interaction. If eye tracking is a key aspect of your application, you may need to message your users to enable it in settings. You can design your application to use other forms of input as a fallback, like head gaze, in the case the user denies permission to use eye tracking. Head tracking and eye tracking are both useful input models to help you interact with holograms. While it's recommended to use eye tracking over head tracking where possible, not every circumstance is best suited for eye tracking, or the user may not have allowed it. Look at this comparison table to understand when to use one input method over the other. In this chapter, we've provided an overview of head tracking and eye tracking and the way